The millionaire was paralyzed when he saw the waitress's pendant, identical to his missing daughter's. Paula Green had always found comfort in the familiar rhythm of the corner cafe. The small, cozy spot in the heart of the town was a place where everyone knew everyone, and where each day unfolded with a predictable sense of normalcy. The smell of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the scent of warm pastries, creating an inviting atmosphere that kept locals coming back day after day. Every morning, Paula would arrive early, before the first light of dawn, to prepare for the day's rush. The cafe was her sanctuary, a place where she could lose herself in the steady hum of conversation and the clinking of cups. For as long as she could remember, the cafe had been her constant, a refuge from the uncertainty that had always loomed in the background of her life. Despite her bright smile and cheerful demeanor, Paula carried with her a deep-seated sadness, a mystery that had haunted her for years. She didn't know where she came from. Abandoned as a baby at the doorstep of an orphanage, Paula had only one link to her past: a delicate pendant with a moon and star, found around her neck on that fateful night. The pendant was her only clue, but it had never revealed its secrets. The regulars at the cafe knew Paula well, or at least they thought they did. She was always kind, always ready with a warm smile or a friendly word. Yet no one knew the depth of her loneliness, the yearning for answers that she had learned to bury deep within herself. One of the cafe's most loyal customers was Ethan Moore, a respected businessman who frequented the cafe to escape the pressures of his demanding job. Ethan was well liked in the community, known for his fairness and integrity. He had a presence that commanded respect, but there was also a gentleness about him that put people at ease. Paula admired Ethan from afar, grateful for his consistent kindness and the quiet way he seemed to notice the little things, like when someone needed a moment of peace or an extra smile to brighten their day. Then there was Lucas Brown, Ethan's vice president, who was the complete opposite. Lucas was cold and rigid, a man who saw people as little more than tools to be used and discarded. He rarely came to the cafe, and when he did, it was usually to bark orders into his phone or complain about something trivial. The staff had learned to steer clear of him, but on this particular morning, Paula wasn't so lucky. It was a busy morning, the cafe bustling with the usual breakfast crowd. Paula was weaving through the tables, balancing trays of coffee and pastries, when she felt a slight nudge from behind. Startled, she lost her balance, and in an instant, a cup of hot coffee slipped from the tray and spilled all over Lucas, who had just walked in. The cafe fell silent. Paula's heart raced as she stared in horror at the spreading stain on Lucas's expensive suit. She knew this was bad, very bad. Lucas's face turned red with anger as he wiped at the coffee with a napkin, his eyes narrowing at Paula. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he snapped, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Brown," Paula stammered, desperately trying to make things right. "It was an accident. I didn't see you there." "An accident?" Lucas spat, his voice dripping with disdain. "Do you even know how much this suit costs?" "Of course not. You're just a clumsy waitress who can't even do her job properly." Paula felt her face flush with embarrassment as the other customers looked on. She opened her mouth to apologize again, but before she could, a calm, firm voice cut in. "That's enough, Lucas." Ethan Moore had stepped forward, his expression calm but authoritative. He placed a reassuring hand on Paula's shoulder, signaling her to step back. "It was an accident. There's no need to make a scene." Lucas glared at Ethan, clearly not accustomed to being challenged, especially not in public. "This is unacceptable, Ethan. She should be more careful." "And I'm sure she will be," Ethan replied evenly, his gaze steady. "But we all make mistakes. Let's not blow this out of proportion." For a moment, the tension hung in the air, thick and palpable. Lucas seemed ready to argue, but something in Ethan's calm demeanor made him think twice. With a final, frustrated huff, Lucas turned on his heel and stormed out of the cafe, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. Paula stood there, her hands trembling slightly. She had never felt so humiliated, yet at the same time, she was overwhelmed with gratitude for Ethan's intervention. "Thank you, Mr. Moore," she murmured, still shaken. Ethan smiled gently at her. "No need to thank me, Paula. Accidents happen. Don't let him get to you." As Ethan turned to leave, his eyes caught sight of something that made him pause. The small pendant around Paula's neck, the one she always wore, glinted in the morning light. For a moment, Ethan stared at it, a strange expression crossing his face. He opened his mouth to say something, but then seemed to think better of it. Instead, he simply nodded at Paula and left the cafe, leaving her with a feeling she couldn't quite place, something between confusion and curiosity. The rest of the day at the cafe passed in a blur for Paula. Though the usual hustle and bustle continued, she couldn't shake the image of Ethan Moore staring at her pendant. His reaction had been so unexpected, almost as if he recognized it. But how could that be possible? The pendant was the only link she had to a past she knew nothing about, a mystery that had remained unsolved for as long as she could remember. After the incident with Lucas, Paula had tried to push the encounter with Ethan out of her mind, focusing instead on her work. But every time she caught a glimpse of the small moon and star pendant resting against her chest, the memory came rushing back. What had Ethan seen? And why had it seemed to affect him so deeply? By the time her shift ended, Paula was both physically and emotionally drained. She said her goodbyes to the other staff and left the cafe, the cool evening air a welcome relief after the stuffiness of the busy day. As she walked home, her thoughts kept drifting back to Ethan. There was something she needed to understand, something that was beginning to feel important in a way she couldn't quite explain. That night, Paula tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. The pendant felt heavier around her neck, almost like it was pulling her toward something. Finally, as the clock neared midnight, she made a decision. She had to talk to Ethan. The next morning, Paula arrived at the cafe early, hoping to catch Ethan before the day's rush began. She was nervous, her hands fidgeting as she waited by the counter. What was she even going to say? How could she ask about something so personal without seeming intrusive or odd? Her thoughts were interrupted when the bell above the door jingled, and Ethan walked in, just as she had hoped. He smiled warmly at her, though there was a hint of something more in his eyes, something that hadn't been there before. "Good morning, Paula," Ethan said, his voice as calm as ever. "How are you today?" Paula hesitated, unsure of how to start the conversation. "Good morning, Mr. Moore. Well, actually, there's something I wanted to ask you about, if you don't mind." Ethan's smile faded slightly, replaced by a more serious expression. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Paula took a deep breath, her fingers instinctively reaching for the pendant around her neck. "Yesterday, when you defended me against Lucas, I noticed that you were looking at my pendant. You seemed, I don't know, like you recognized it. And it's just that this pendant is very important to me. It's the only thing I have from before I was adopted. I don't know where it came from, or what it means, but do you?" Ethan's gaze shifted to the pendant again, and for a moment, he seemed lost in thought. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost reverent. "That pendant. It looks exactly like one I gave to my daughter, many years ago." Paula felt her heart skip a beat. "Your daughter?" Ethan nodded, his expression pained. "Yes. Her name was Emily. She disappeared when she was very young. It was a terrible time. And despite all my efforts, I never found her. The pendant you're wearing is identical to the one I had made for her. It was part of a pair, a matching set. I kept one, and she had the other." Paula's mind raced, trying to process what Ethan was saying. Could it be possible? Could she be? No, it was too incredible to believe. And yet, the way Ethan was looking at her, the emotion in his voice, made her wonder if this could be the answer to the questions that had plagued her all her life. "I know this might sound strange," Ethan continued, his voice trembling slightly. "But would you be willing to take a DNA test? I need to know. If there's any chance that you might be Emily, I can't let it go." Paula's breath caught in her throat. A DNA test. The idea was overwhelming, terrifying even. But at the same time, it was the first real possibility she had ever had of uncovering her past. Could she really turn away from that? I don't know what to say, Paula admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I've always wondered where I came from, why I was abandoned. If there's even a chance that you're my father, then, yes, I'll do the test. Ethan's relief was palpable. Thank you, Paula. I know this is a lot to take in, and I promise, whatever the results, I'll be here for you. We'll get through this together. The next few days were a blur of emotions for Paula. The DNA test was done quickly, but the waiting was agonizing. She found herself constantly wondering what the results would say, how they would change her life. At the cafe, she went through the motions of her daily routine, but her mind was always elsewhere, caught in a whirlwind of hope and fear. Ethan, too, was a constant presence in her thoughts. Every time he came into the cafe, they would exchange a few words, but both of them knew there was a much deeper conversation waiting to be had. The unspoken question hung in the air between them, a weight neither of them could ignore. Finally, the day came when the results were ready. Paula felt like she was walking through a dream as she made her way to the cafe that morning, her heart pounding in her chest. Ethan was already there, sitting at their usual table, an envelope in his hands. Paula sat down across from him, her hands trembling slightly. Ethan looked at her with a mixture of hope and apprehension, then slowly handed her the envelope. Paula, he said softly, whatever happens, I want you to know that you've become very important to me. If you're my daughter, then this is the beginning of something wonderful. And if not, well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Paula nodded, unable to find the words to respond. She took a deep breath, then carefully opened the envelope and pulled out the paper inside. As her eyes scanned the words, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. The test was positive. Paula Green was Emily Moore, Ethan's long-lost daughter. The room seemed to spin around Paula as she absorbed the meaning of the words on the paper. She was Emily Moore, the daughter of Ethan Moore, the man who had unknowingly been sitting in the cafe day after day, just a few feet away from her. It was overwhelming, surreal, and so unexpected that she felt as if she were caught in a dream. Ethan, sitting across from her, watched her closely, his own emotions barely contained. He had prepared himself for this moment, hoping but not daring to fully believe that it could be true. And yet, here it was. Proof that the daughter he had lost so many years ago was alive and sitting right in front of him. Emily. The name felt foreign on her tongue, but hearing Ethan say it filled Paula with a strange sense of belonging. I'm Emily, she whispered, as if saying it aloud would make it more real. Ethan nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Yes, you are. You're my Emily. He reached across the table, gently taking her hands in his. I can't tell you how much this means to me. I've spent years searching for you, hoping that you were still out there somewhere, but I never imagined. His voice broke, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The cafe, normally filled with the buzz of conversation and the clatter of dishes, seemed unusually quiet, as if the world itself had paused to let them have this moment. Paula, no, Emily, felt tears welling up in her own eyes. All this time, I didn't know, she said softly. I didn't know who I was, or where I came from. I've always felt like something was missing, like I was incomplete. Ethan squeezed her hands, his grip firm and reassuring. You were never incomplete. You were always my daughter, even when we were apart. And now that we've found each other again, we can start to fill in those missing pieces together. But as much as Emily wanted to embrace this new identity, to accept the love and connection that Ethan was offering, she couldn't ignore the questions that still lingered in the back of her mind. Why had she been abandoned? What had happened on that fateful day when she disappeared? She looked up at Ethan, her expression conflicted. "But what happened? How did I end up at that orphanage? Why didn't you find me sooner?" Ethan's face darkened, the joy of their reunion momentarily overshadowed by the painful memories that her questions stirred. He released her hands and leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair as he searched for the right words. "It was a long time ago," he began, his voice tinged with regret. "You were just a little girl. We were on our way back from a trip, driving along a quiet road when it happened. A car came out of nowhere and hit us. The impact was severe. When I woke up, you were gone." Emily listened intently, her heart aching as she imagined the fear and confusion that must have gripped her younger self. "And no one saw what happened? No one could tell you where I went?" Ethan shook his head, his expression grim. "The police searched for weeks, but there was no trace of you. They found your mother, but she didn't make it." His voice broke again, and he took a moment to compose himself before continuing. "For a long time, I thought you had been taken, maybe by someone who wanted to hurt our family, but there were no leads, no ransom demands, nothing. It was like you had vanished into thin air." Emily felt a pang of sorrow for the mother she had never known, for the family she had lost without even realizing it. But there was something else nagging at her, something that didn't quite add up. "But how did I end up at the orphanage? Who brought me there?" Ethan's expression grew even more troubled. "That's the part I don't know. And it's why I never stopped searching. I couldn't believe that you were just gone. Someone had to have taken you, and I wanted to find out who and why. But after years of dead ends, I had to accept that I might never get those answers." Emily's mind raced as she tried to piece together the fragments of information. Someone had taken her from the scene of the accident. But why? And why had they abandoned her at an orphanage, rather than trying to return her to her father? The questions swirled in her head, leaving her feeling dizzy and overwhelmed. "I want to know," she said firmly, meeting Ethan's gaze with a newfound determination. "I need to know the truth about what happened. There has to be something we're missing, some clue that can help us understand why this happened." Ethan nodded, his expression mirroring her resolve. "We'll find out together. Whatever it takes, we'll uncover the truth." For the first time in her life, Emily felt a sense of direction, a purpose that went beyond the daily routine of serving coffee and making small talk with customers. She was no longer just Paula Green, the girl with no past. She was Emily Moore, and she had a father who loved her and was willing to move heaven and earth to find out what had happened all those years ago. As they sat together in the quiet cafe, a plan began to form. They would start by revisiting the places connected to her past, the orphanage where she had been left, the town where the accident had occurred. They would talk to anyone who might remember something, anyone who could provide a piece of the puzzle. And as they embarked on this journey of discovery, Emily knew that she was not alone. She had her father by her side, and together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The path to the truth might be long and difficult, but for the first time, Emily felt ready to take it. The plan was set. Over the next few days, Emily and Ethan began their journey to uncover the truth about her disappearance. It felt strange to think of herself as Emily Moore after all these years of being Paula Green. But as the days went by, she started to grow into her new identity. She was no longer the lost girl with no past. She was the daughter of Ethan Moore, and together they were determined to piece together the mystery of her childhood. Their first stop was the orphanage where Emily had been left as a baby. The building itself hadn't changed much over the years, a simple, sturdy structure with a faded sign that read St. Mary's Orphanage. As they approached, Emily felt a wave of nervousness. This was the place where her life as Paula had begun, the place where she had been left alone without any memory of what had happened before. The director of the orphanage, a kindly old woman named Mrs. Thompson, welcomed them with a warm smile. She remembered Emily, or rather Paula, well. "You were such a quiet little thing. she said, her eyes filled with nostalgia. Always so polite, always so helpful. It broke my heart when you left, but I'm so glad to see you doing well now. Emily returned Mrs. Thompson's smile, though inside she was filled with a mix of emotions. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. This place was my home for so long, but there are still so many things I don't know, like how I ended up here. Mrs. Thompson's expression grew serious. I remember the night you were brought in. It was raining heavily, and you were wrapped in a blanket, left on our doorstep. There was no note, no information, just you and that pendant around your neck. We took you in, of course, but it always puzzled me why someone would leave a child like that. Ethan, who had been listening quietly, leaned forward. Did anyone ever come looking for her? Anyone asking questions about a missing child? Mrs. Thompson shook her head. No, not that I recall. We filed a report with the authorities, of course, but nothing ever came of it. It was like she appeared out of nowhere. Emily's heart sank. She had hoped that coming here would provide some answers, but it seemed they were no closer to understanding what had happened. Still, she couldn't give up. Not now. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson, Ethan said, his voice gentle. We're trying to find out what happened to Emily before she was brought here. If you think of anything at all, that might help us. Please let us know. Mrs. Thompson promised she would, but as they left the orphanage, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of disappointment. The pieces of the puzzle were still scattered, and she was no closer to putting them together. As they got back into the car, Ethan reached over and squeezed her hand. We'll find the answers, Emily. It's just going to take time. Emily nodded, trying to hold on to his optimism. I know, Dad. I thought maybe coming here would help, but it feels like we're still in the dark. Ethan gave her a reassuring smile. We'll keep looking. There's bound to be something out there, some clue that we haven't uncovered yet. But even as they continued their search, there was another person who had become increasingly aware of their efforts, Lucas Brown. The news that Ethan had found his daughter had spread quickly, and it wasn't long before Lucas heard about it. At first, he dismissed it as just another distraction. But as the days passed, he began to realize the potential danger this reunion posed to him. Lucas had always been a man who valued control, and the thought of losing it made him uneasy. He had worked too hard, taken too many risks, to allow anyone, especially Emily Moore, to jeopardize everything he had built. And so, as he kept an eye on Ethan and Emily's movements, he began to devise a plan of his own. Lucas's connections ran deep, and it wasn't difficult for him to gather information about their activities. He learned about their visit to the orphanage and their plans to continue digging into Emily's past. The more he learned, the more he realized that they were getting dangerously close to discovering the truth, a truth that could ruin him. One evening, as Lucas sat in his office, reviewing the latest reports from his contacts, he made a decision. He couldn't afford to wait and see what would happen. He needed to take action, and fast. He picked up the phone and dialed a number, his expression cold and calculating. I need you to keep an eye on Ethan Moore and his daughter, Lucas said into the phone. They're looking into her past, and I want to know everything they find out. If they get too close to anything that could cause problems, you know what to do. The person on the other end of the line agreed, and Lucas hung up, a grim satisfaction settling over him. He had always known how to protect his interests, and this would be no different. He would make sure that Emily and Ethan never found out the full truth. He had too much to lose. Meanwhile, unaware of the shadow that Lucas was casting over their investigation, Ethan and Emily continued their search. They visited the town where the accident had occurred, hoping to find someone who might remember something. A detail, a name, anything that could lead them to the person who had taken Emily from the scene and left her at the orphanage. But as they dug deeper, they began to sense that something wasn't right. People seemed hesitant to talk to them, as if they were afraid of getting involved. It was subtle, but there was an undercurrent of fear in the way they were treated. And the more they pushed, the more they felt like they were being watched. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were getting close to something important, something that someone didn't want them to find. And as the days went on, that feeling only grew stronger. The sense of unease that had been growing in Emily's heart refused to dissipate. Every step she and Ethan took seemed to be met with resistance, as if an invisible force was working against them, trying to keep them from uncovering the truth. It was frustrating, and more than that, it was frightening. But Emily was determined to press on. She needed to know what had happened to her, why she had been taken, and who had left her at the orphanage. Their next stop was the town's local library, where they hoped to find old newspaper articles or records about the accident that had changed Emily's life forever. The library was quiet, almost eerily so, and the librarian, a middle-aged woman with wire-rimmed glasses, seemed a little too eager to help them. Still, Emily pushed her unease aside and focused on the task at hand. They spent hours combing through dusty archives, searching for anything that might provide a clue. Finally, as the afternoon sun began to cast long shadows across the library floor, Emily found something. It was an old newspaper article, dated the day after the accident. The headline read, "Tragic Accident Claims One Life, Child Missing." Emily's breath caught in her throat as she read the article. It detailed the events of the accident, much of which she already knew from Ethan's account. But there was one detail that hadn't been mentioned before. A witness, someone who had seen the aftermath of the crash. According to the article, a local farmer named Harold Thompson had been the first to arrive at the scene. He had called the authorities and waited with the wreckage until they arrived. But by the time they got there, the child, Emily, was gone. The article quoted Thompson as saying that he had seen a man near the crash site, someone he didn't recognize, who had disappeared before the police arrived. Emily's heart raced as she showed the article to Ethan. "This is it," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "This is the lead we've been looking for. If we can find this Harold Thompson, maybe he can tell us more about the man he saw." Ethan nodded, his expression serious. "We need to talk to him. If he's still around, he might remember something that could help us." They quickly gathered their things and left the library, the article clutched tightly in Emily's hand. As they walked to the car, Emily felt a surge of hope. For the first time since they had begun their search, they had a solid lead. Someone who had been there. Someone who might know the truth. It didn't take long to track down Harold Thompson. He still lived on the same farm, just outside of town. The drive there was quiet, both of them lost in their thoughts, anticipating what they might learn. The sun was setting as they pulled up to the farmhouse, casting a warm, golden light over the fields. Harold Thompson was an older man now, his once strong frame stooped with age, but his eyes were sharp and clear as he greeted them at the door. Ethan introduced them, explaining briefly that they were there to ask about the accident all those years ago. Thompson's expression darkened as he listened. "I remember that day like it was yesterday," he said, his voice tinged with sadness. "It was a terrible thing. What happened to that family? I've thought about it often over the years." Emily leaned forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "The article mentioned that you saw a man near the crash site. Do you remember anything about him? Anything that might help us find out who he was?" Thompson frowned, his brow furrowing in concentration. "I do remember seeing someone. He was a tall man, well-dressed, which seemed odd, given where we were. He wasn't from around here, that's for sure. I didn't get a good look at his face. He was too far away, but I remember thinking it was strange that he didn't come over to help. He just stood there, watching, and then he was gone." Ethan exchanged a glance with Emily, both of them thinking the same thing. This man, whoever he was, could have been the one who took Emily from the scene. But why? And where had he gone afterward? "Did you ever see him again?" Ethan asked, his tone urgent. Thompson shook his head. "No, never. After the police arrived, I didn't think much more about it. They searched the area, but they never found the child. It was like she just vanished." Emily's mind was spinning with possibilities. Could this man have been involved in some kind of plot? Was it possible that he had taken her for a reason? only to abandon her at the orphanage later? The questions were endless, and the answers seemed just out of reach. As they thanked Thompson and left the farm, Emily felt a growing sense of urgency. They were getting closer to the truth, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they were also getting closer to danger. Whoever had taken her might not want to be found, and if Lucas Brown was involved, she knew they had to be careful. The drive back to town was tense. Ethan was quiet, his hands gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. "We need to be cautious," he finally said, breaking the silence. "If this man had anything to do with what happened to you, we're dealing with someone who's willing to go to great lengths to cover his tracks." Emily nodded, her resolve hardening. "I'm not going to back down, Dad. We need to find out the truth, no matter what." But even as she said the words, Emily couldn't ignore the growing knot of fear in her stomach. She knew they were on the right track, but she also knew that the closer they got, the more dangerous it would become. As they pulled into town, Emily caught sight of a familiar figure standing near the cafe, Lucas Brown. He was watching them, his expression unreadable. For a moment, their eyes met, and Emily felt a chill run down her spine. Lucas turned and walked away, but the unease he left behind lingered long after he was gone. The encounter with Lucas left Emily feeling unnerved, but she tried to shake it off as she and Ethan continued their investigation. There was no doubt in her mind now. Lucas Brown was involved in some way, and his presence at the cafe had been no coincidence. He was watching them, perhaps even trying to intimidate them into backing off. But Emily was determined not to let him succeed. The next morning, Ethan received an unexpected call at the cafe. It was Lucas, his voice calm and collected as always, but with an underlying tension that Ethan couldn't ignore. "Ethan," Lucas began, "we need to talk. It's about Emily." Ethan felt a surge of anger at the way Lucas spoke her name, as if he had any right to discuss her after everything he'd done. "What do you want, Lucas?" Lucas's tone remained even, but there was a hint of impatience. "This has gone on long enough. You've been digging into things that are better left alone. If you're smart, you'll stop before someone gets hurt." Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. "Is that a threat?" "Just a friendly piece of advice," Lucas replied smoothly. "Meet me at my office this afternoon. We can discuss this like reasonable adults." Ethan didn't trust Lucas any further than he could throw him, but he knew he had no choice but to go. "Fine. I'll be there." After hanging up, Ethan immediately called Emily. "Lucas wants to meet," he said, keeping his voice calm despite the anxiety gnawing at him. "He says it's about you." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "Do you think he knows something? Or is he just trying to scare us?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "But whatever it is, we're going to find out. I don't want you anywhere near him, though. Let me handle this." Emily wanted to argue, but she could hear the concern in her father's voice. "Okay, Dad. Just be careful." Ethan promised he would, but as he drove to Lucas's office later that day, his mind was racing. He knew Lucas was dangerous, but just how far was he willing to go to protect his secrets? Whatever Lucas had planned, Ethan needed to stay one step ahead. When Ethan arrived at Lucas's office, he was greeted with the same cold efficiency that characterized everything about Lucas. The office itself was sleek and modern, with large windows overlooking the city. But there was something sterile and unwelcoming about the space. It reflected Lucas's personality perfectly, polished on the surface, but with an undercurrent of something much darker. Lucas was waiting for him, seated behind his massive desk. He stood as Ethan entered, extending a hand in a gesture that was more for show than sincerity. Ethan ignored it, opting instead to get straight to the point. "All right, Lucas," Ethan said, his voice firm. "What's this all about?" Lucas's smile was thin, barely reaching his eyes. "I'll be honest, Ethan. You and your daughter are treading on dangerous ground. There are things in this world that are best left buried, and your investigation is stirring up the past in a way that could have serious consequences." Ethan crossed his arms, not budging. "What kind of consequences?" Lucas leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping lightly on the desk. You know as well as I do that power comes with enemies. There are people who wouldn't hesitate to use your daughter's reappearance to their advantage. They'll dig into every corner of your life, exploit every weakness. Is that really what you want for her? Ethan could feel his temper rising. Don't pretend like you're concerned about Emily. This is about you. You're scared of what we might find out. Lucas's eyes narrowed, his calm demeanor slipping just a fraction. I'm not the one who should be scared, Ethan. But you're right. I do have a vested interest in keeping certain things under wraps. So here's my offer. You drop this little investigation, and I'll make sure Emily is well taken care of. No more digging, no more questions. You can both move on with your lives. Ethan stared at him, incredulous. You think you can buy us off, after everything you've done? Lucas's smile widened, a predatory gleam in his eyes. Call it a compromise, a way to avoid unnecessary conflict. But make no mistake, Ethan, if you continue down this path, there will be consequences. I can guarantee that. Ethan's mind was spinning. He knew Lucas wasn't bluffing. The man was too calculating, too ruthless to make empty threats. But giving in to him wasn't an option either. He couldn't let Lucas win, not when they were so close to the truth. I'll think about your offer, Ethan said, his voice carefully neutral. But don't expect me to make any decisions today. Lucas seemed satisfied with that, leaning back in his chair with a self-assured smirk. Take your time, Ethan. Just remember, some things are better left in the dark. Ethan left the office with a sense of unease gnawing at him. Lucas had played his hand, and it was clear that he was prepared to go to great lengths to protect his secrets. But Ethan wasn't about to back down. Not now. Not when his daughter's future was at stake. When he returned to the cafe, Emily was waiting for him, her face filled with concern. What did he say? Ethan sat down beside her, sighing heavily. He wants us to stop. He's willing to pay us off, make sure you're taken care of, as he put it. But he made it clear that if we keep going, things could get dangerous. Emily frowned, anger flaring in her eyes. He's trying to scare us. He knows we're getting close to something, and he doesn't want us to find out what it is. Ethan nodded. Exactly. But we can't let him intimidate us. We need to be careful, though. Lucas isn't someone to be taken lightly. Emily reached out and took her father's hand, squeezing it reassuringly. We'll be careful, Dad. But we're not stopping. We're going to find out the truth, no matter what. Ethan looked at his daughter, feeling a swell of pride and fear in equal measure. She was strong, determined, just like her mother had been. But he couldn't shake the feeling that they were heading into dangerous territory, and he didn't know how far Lucas would go to protect his secrets. As they sat together in the quiet cafe, Ethan made a silent vow. No matter what happened, he would protect his daughter. He had already lost her once, and he wasn't about to let that happen again. But as the sun set outside, casting long shadows across the room, Ethan knew that the battle was far from over. Lucas had made his move, and now it was up to them to outsmart him, before it was too late. The following days were filled with a tense anticipation as Emily and Ethan prepared for their next move. Lucas's threats weighed heavily on both of them, but they knew they couldn't stop now. The closer they got to the truth, the more dangerous it became. Yet turning back was no longer an option. They needed to expose Lucas and uncover the full story of what had happened all those years ago. Their investigation led them to dig deeper into the details of the accident and the mysterious man that Harold Thompson had seen at the scene. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this man held the key to everything, why she had been taken, who had left her at the orphanage, and how Lucas was involved. But finding him after all these years was proving to be difficult. As they scoured old records, made phone calls, and interviewed anyone who might have known something, they slowly began to piece together a picture. The man Harold had seen wasn't just a passerby. He was someone with a vested interest in the Moore family's downfall. And the more they uncovered, the more it became clear that Lucas was at the center of it all. It was late one evening when they finally caught a break. A retired private investigator, a friend of Ethan's from his earlier years, reached out to them with some critical information. He had been following the case for years, long after it had gone cold, and he had come across some details that might just blow the whole thing wide open. They arranged to meet him at a secluded spot outside of town, away from prying eyes. The drive there was tense, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. Emily could feel her heart pounding in her chest as they pulled up to the old, abandoned warehouse where the meeting was to take place. The building was dark, the only light coming from the headlights of their car. Ethan and Emily stepped out, their footsteps echoing against the concrete as they approached the warehouse door. The investigator, a man in his 60s with a weathered face and a serious demeanor, was waiting for them inside. His name was Frank Miller, and he had been a thorn in Lucas's side for years, always digging where he wasn't supposed to. "Glad you could make it," Frank said, his voice low as he shook hands with Ethan. "I've got something you're going to want to see." He led them to a small table in the corner, where he had laid out a file filled with documents, photos, and handwritten notes. Emily leaned over the table, her eyes scanning the contents eagerly. There were pictures of the crash site, reports from the original investigation, and a series of letters that had been written by Lucas Brown. "These letters," Frank began, tapping one of the sheets of paper, "were written by Lucas to an associate of his, someone who was involved in orchestrating the accident. They detail the plan to sabotage your car, Ethan, to make it look like a tragic accident. But it goes deeper than that. They also discuss what was to be done with Emily afterward." Emily felt a cold chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" Frank sighed, his expression grim. "Lucas didn't just want you out of the picture, Ethan. He wanted to ensure that Emily wouldn't come back to haunt him later. So he arranged for her to be taken and placed in an orphanage far away, under a different name. The idea was that she would grow up never knowing who she really was, while Lucas consolidated his power over your company." Ethan's face turned pale as he absorbed the gravity of Frank's words. "So it wasn't just about the accident? He wanted to erase my family from existence." Frank nodded. "That's right. And it almost worked. But now that Emily's back, Lucas is getting desperate. He knows that if this information comes to light, it's all over for him." Emily's hand shook as she picked up one of the letters, reading the cold, calculated words that Lucas had written. He had plotted her disappearance, orchestrated the whole thing with chilling precision. It was hard to fathom the level of deceit and malice that had gone into destroying her family. Ethan's anger simmered just beneath the surface as he looked at Frank. "We need to take this to the authorities. Lucas needs to be stopped." Frank hesitated, glancing around the darkened warehouse. "You're right, but we need to be careful. Lucas has connections, powerful ones. He's not going to go down without a fight. If we go to the authorities now, there's a chance he could use his influence to bury this, or worse, come after you and Emily directly." Emily's fear mingled with her determination. "So what do we do?" Frank looked at them both, his expression serious. "We need to make sure this information gets out in a way that Lucas can't control. I've got contacts in the media who can help. Once this story breaks, it'll be too big for him to cover up." Ethan nodded, the plan beginning to take shape in his mind. "We'll work with you, Frank. Whatever it takes to bring Lucas down." As they gathered the documents and prepared to leave, Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose. The truth was finally coming to light, and with it, the chance to hold Lucas accountable for everything he had done. But she also knew that the most dangerous part of their journey was just beginning. Lucas wouldn't go down without a fight, and they needed to be ready for whatever came next. As they drove back to town, the gravity of their situation settled over them like a heavy cloud. The fight against Lucas was far from over, but they had the truth on their side. And with Frank's help, they would make sure that justice was served. For Emily, this wasn't just about uncovering the past. It was about reclaiming her life and her identity. Lucas had tried to erase her, to bury her in a past that she could never escape. But now, she was ready to face him head-on, to show him that she was stronger than he ever imagined. And as they neared the town, the lights of the city shining in the distance, Emily knew that there was no turning back. The truth was out, and soon, the whole world would know it. The morning air was crisp as Emily and Ethan prepared for the biggest day of their lives. The truth was finally within their grasp, and with Frank Miller's help, they had a plan to bring Lucas Brown to justice. But there was no denying the tension that hung over them like a storm cloud. Today would determine everything. Ethan had arranged for a meeting at the company's headquarters, where Lucas had dominated for so long. The setting was symbolic. The very place where Lucas had consolidated his power would be where his downfall began. Frank had already contacted several trusted media outlets, ensuring that journalists would be present to witness the confrontation. There would be no way for Lucas to twist the narrative or sweep the truth under the rug. As they drove to the headquarters, Emily felt a mix of fear and determination. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the chance to reclaim her life and expose the man who had tried to erase her existence. But she knew that Lucas wouldn't go down without a fight. He was dangerous, and she needed to be ready for anything. When they arrived at the building, they were met by Frank, who was standing outside with a few reporters already milling around, their cameras and microphones at the ready. Frank gave them a reassuring nod as they stepped out of the car. "Everything's set. Lucas won't be able to escape this time." Ethan nodded, his expression grim. "Let's do this." They entered the building, the atmosphere tense with anticipation. Emily's heart raced as they made their way to the conference room where the meeting was to take place. The room was large, with a long table in the center and windows that overlooked the city. It was a room meant for power plays and high-stakes decisions, a fitting stage for what was about to unfold. Lucas was already there, sitting at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. He looked up as they entered, his eyes narrowing slightly when he saw the determined looks on their faces. But if he was nervous, he didn't show it. "Ethan, Emily." Lucas greeted them with a slight nod, his voice as smooth as ever. "I wasn't expecting such a public affair." Ethan didn't waste any time with pleasantries. "We're done playing your games, Lucas. We know everything. About the accident, about the letters, about how you orchestrated the whole thing to take control of the company and erase my family." Lucas's expression didn't waver. "I don't know what you're talking about. You've been listening to conspiracy theories, Ethan. None of what you're saying has any basis in reality." Emily stepped forward, her voice steady but laced with anger. "You can stop lying, Lucas. We have proof. Letters you wrote detailing your plan to sabotage the car, to take me and leave me at the orphanage under a different name. You tried to erase me, but you failed." For the first time, a flicker of something crossed Lucas's face, something like fear. But it was gone as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by his usual calm demeanor. "Even if such letters existed, which I doubt, how do you plan to prove it? This is just your word against mine." Frank stepped forward, holding up the file of documents they had gathered. "It's not just their word, Lucas. These documents speak for themselves, and they've already been shared with the press. There's no hiding this anymore." Lucas's eyes darted to the file, and for a moment, his composure slipped. He could see the reporters gathering outside the room, cameras ready to capture every moment. The walls were closing in, and he knew it. But Lucas wasn't the type to go down quietly. He stood up, his voice rising with a mix of desperation and anger. "You think you've won? You think you can just waltz in here and take everything from me? I built this company. I made it what it is today. You're nothing without me." Ethan met Lucas's outburst with a calm resolve. "This company was built on lies and deceit, Lucas. You betrayed everyone who trusted you, and now it's time for you to face the consequences." The tension in the room was palpable as Lucas stared down Ethan and Emily, his mind racing for a way out. But he could see that there was none. The reporters were already recording. The evidence was in the open, and his usual tactics of intimidation and manipulation wouldn't work this time. Finally, Lucas let out a bitter laugh, the sound filled with a twisted sense of resignation. You think this will end with me? There are others who are involved, who have just as much to lose as I do. You won't be able to take them all down." Ethan stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "Maybe not, but we'll start with you." At that moment, the doors to the conference room burst open, and a group of police officers entered, their expressions serious. "Lucas Brown, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder," one of the officers said, stepping forward to place handcuffs on Lucas. Lucas didn't resist, but the fury in his eyes was unmistakable as he was led away. "This isn't over, Ethan. This is just the beginning," he snarled as they escorted him out of the room. But Ethan and Emily knew that, for them, this was the end of a long, painful chapter. They watched as Lucas was taken away, the weight of everything that had happened finally beginning to lift. The reporters swarmed them, eager for statements. But Frank stepped in to handle the press, allowing Ethan and Emily a moment to themselves. Emily turned to her father, her voice trembling with emotion. "We did it, Dad. We finally did it." Ethan pulled her into a tight embrace, his voice thick with pride and relief. "I'm so proud of you, Emily. You're stronger than I ever could have imagined." As they stood there, holding on to each other, Emily felt a sense of closure that she hadn't known she needed. The truth was out, and Lucas would no longer have the power to hurt them. For the first time in years, she felt free to move forward, to embrace the life she had always deserved. But she also knew that their journey wasn't over. Lucas had hinted at others who were involved, and there was still more to uncover. But for now, they had won a significant victory, and that was enough. As they left the building, the sun was shining brightly, a stark contrast to the darkness they had been through. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape. And with Ethan by her side, Emily knew she could face whatever came next. The days following Lucas Brown's arrest were a whirlwind of media coverage, legal proceedings, and a mixture of relief and exhaustion for Emily and Ethan. The story of Lucas's crimes had gripped the nation, and the news outlets couldn't get enough of the dramatic downfall of the once powerful businessman. For Emily, it was surreal to see her face on television and in newspapers, labeled as the long-lost daughter of Ethan Moore, the woman who had brought down Lucas Brown. But beneath the surface of public victory, there was still a deep well of emotions that Emily had to confront. The truth about her past had come to light, but it didn't erase the years of uncertainty and loss that she had endured. And while she was grateful to have found her father and reclaimed her identity, there were still questions that lingered, unresolved. One evening, a few days after Lucas's arrest, Emily found herself alone in the cafe, the familiar surroundings providing a sense of comfort as she sat by the window, gazing out at the quiet street. The cafe had always been her refuge, a place where she could lose herself in the routine of serving customers and making coffee. But now, it felt different, like a chapter of her life that was slowly coming to a close. Ethan joined her a few minutes later, carrying 2 mugs of steaming coffee. He handed one to her and sat down across the table, his expression thoughtful. "It feels strange, doesn't it?" he said quietly, "knowing that it's finally over." Emily nodded, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "It does. I thought that finding out the truth would make everything better, but it's more complicated than that." Ethan looked at her with understanding. "It's natural to feel that way. You've been through so much, Emily, and even though we've uncovered the truth, it doesn't erase the pain of what you've experienced." Emily sighed, taking a sip of her coffee. "I just keep thinking about all the years I spent not knowing who I was, not knowing that I had a father who was searching for me. I'm grateful that we found each other, but I can't help wondering how different things might have been if Lucas hadn't taken me." Ethan reached across the table and took her hand, his grip gentle but firm. "I think about that too. But what's important now is that we have each other. We can't change the past, but we can move forward together. We can make new memories, build a future that isn't defined by what Lucas tried to do." Emily smiled softly, appreciating his words. "You're right. I just need time to process everything. It's like I'm finally able to grieve for the life I lost, and that's not something that happens overnight." Ethan nodded, his expression pensive. "And you don't have to go through it alone. I'm here for you, every step of the way. We're a family now, and that's something Lucas could never take from us." The word family warmed Emily's heart in a way she hadn't expected. For so long, she had felt like an outsider, disconnected from any sense of belonging. But now, sitting here with her father, she realized that she wasn't alone anymore. She had someone who cared about her, who understood her pain, and who was committed to helping her heal. As they continued to talk, their conversation turned to the future. There were still loose ends to tie up, and the full extent of Lucas's network had yet to be uncovered. The authorities were working to identify others who had been involved in the conspiracy, and there was no telling how far-reaching the investigation would go. But for now, Emily and Ethan were focused on rebuilding their lives. Ethan was determined to restore the company's integrity, ensuring that it would never again be tainted by the corruption that Lucas had brought. He wanted Emily to be a part of that process, to take on a leadership role within the company if she was ready. "I know it's a lot to ask," Ethan said carefully, "but I believe in you, Emily. You have the strength and the intelligence to help lead this company into a new era. I want you by my side, not just as my daughter, but as a partner." Emily considered his words, feeling a mixture of pride and uncertainty. She had never imagined herself in such a position, but the idea of working alongside her father, of helping to shape the future of the company that was rightfully hers, was intriguing. "I'll think about it," she said finally, her voice steady. "I want to make sure I'm doing this for the right reasons, not just to prove something to myself or to anyone else, but because it's what I truly want." Ethan smiled, clearly pleased with her response. "That's all I can ask. Take your time. Whatever you decide, I'll support you." Their conversation drifted to lighter topics as the evening wore on, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Emily allowed herself to relax. The weight of the past few weeks had been immense, but now that it was lifting, she could finally breathe a little easier. As they finished their coffee and prepared to leave the cafe, Emily felt a sense of peace settling over her. The road ahead was still uncertain, but she was no longer facing it alone. She had her father, and together they would navigate whatever challenges came their way. The night air was cool as they stepped outside, the city lights twinkling above them like stars. Ethan wrapped an arm around Emily's shoulders, pulling her close as they walked down the quiet street. The future stretched out before them, filled with possibilities, some daunting, some exciting, but all of them theirs to explore. For Emily, the journey wasn't over, but it was no longer defined by the shadows of the past. She was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that she had the strength and the support to face it head-on. As they reached the end of the street, Emily glanced back at the cafe one last time. It had been her refuge, her safe place, but now it was time to move forward. With her father by her side and the truth finally out in the open, she knew she was ready for whatever the future held. The following weeks brought a sense of renewal to both Emily and Ethan. With Lucas behind bars and the media frenzy dying down, they finally had the space to focus on the future, one that was no longer overshadowed by the past. Emily had decided to take some time for herself, to reflect on everything that had happened, and to figure out what she truly wanted from life. During this period of reflection, she found herself drawn to the idea of working with her father at the company. It wasn't just about reclaiming her birthright. It was about being part of something bigger, something that could help others in the way she had always wanted to. Ethan had always been a respected figure in the business world, known for his integrity and commitment to doing what was right. Emily wanted to be a part of that legacy, to contribute to building a company that valued people over profit. One morning, as they sat together in Ethan's home office, Emily finally voiced her decision. "Dad, I've been thinking a lot about your offer to work with you at the company, and I've decided that I want to do it. I want to be involved to help make sure the company moves forward in the right direction." Ethan looked at her with a mix of pride and relief. "I'm glad to hear that, Emily. I know it's a big step, and I want you to know that I'm here to support you every step of the way. You don't have to do this alone." Emily smiled, feeling a surge of confidence. "I know, and that's why I think this is the right choice. We can do this together, as a team." With the decision made, Emily and Ethan began to plan how she would integrate into the company. Ethan wanted her to take on a role that allowed her to learn all aspects of the business, from the ground up. He believed that understanding every facet of the company would give her the foundation she needed to become a strong leader in the future. As Emily started her new role, she found herself both excited and challenged by the work. There was so much to learn, and she was determined to prove herself, not just to her father, but to the entire company. The employees had heard about her story, and while many were supportive, she knew there were those who were skeptical. She didn't blame them. After all, she was stepping into a world she had been disconnected from for so long. But Emily was nothing if not resilient. She threw herself into the work, learning everything she could about the company's operations, its people, and its goals. She spent time in every department, getting to know the employees and understanding their challenges. She listened, asked questions, and gradually began to earn the respect of those around her. One of the first initiatives she proposed was a comprehensive employee wellness program. It was something she felt passionate about, having seen firsthand how the stress and demands of the business world could take a toll on people's well-being. The program focused on mental health support, flexible work arrangements, and opportunities for personal and professional development. When she presented the proposal to the executive team, she was nervous, but Ethan stood by her side, offering his quiet support. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and the program was quickly approved for implementation. It was a small victory, but it meant the world to Emily. It showed her that she could make a difference, that she could be a force for positive change within the company. As the weeks turned into months, Emily settled into her new role with a growing sense of purpose. The company was evolving, moving away from the shadow of Lucas's corruption and towards a brighter, more ethical future. And through it all, Ethan was her constant source of guidance and encouragement. They had always been close, but working together had brought them even closer, forging a bond that was unbreakable. But it wasn't just the company that was changing, Emily was changing too. The journey she had been on, from the girl who had once served coffee in a small cafe to the woman who was now helping lead a major corporation, had transformed her in ways she hadn't anticipated. She had discovered strength she didn't know she had, and she had learned to trust herself in a way that was new and empowering. One evening, after a long day at the office, Emily and Ethan sat on the porch of his home, watching the sun set over the horizon. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange, and the air was warm and still. It was a moment of peace, a rare respite from the busyness of their lives. "I'm proud of you, Emily," Ethan said, breaking the comfortable silence. "You've come so far, and I know your mother would be proud too." Emily felt a lump in her throat at the mention of her mother, a woman she had never known but whose presence she felt in the deepest parts of her being. "I hope so," she replied softly. "I think about her a lot, especially now that I know more about what happened. It makes me wish I could have known her, even just a little." Ethan nodded, his gaze distant as he remembered the woman he had loved and lost. "She was a remarkable woman, Emily, and I see so much of her in you. Her strength, her kindness, her determination. You're carrying on her legacy in ways I never imagined." Emily leaned her head on her father's shoulder, feeling a sense of contentment that had been elusive for so long. The road to this moment had been difficult, filled with pain and uncertainty, but it had also brought her to a place of peace and fulfillment. She knew there would still be challenges ahead. Life was never without its trials, but she was ready to face them, secure in the knowledge that she had the love and support of her father. As the last rays of the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in twilight, Emily felt a quiet certainty settle in her heart. This was where she belonged, by her father's side, continuing the work they had started together. The future was theirs to shape, and she was ready to embrace it with open arms. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Emily knew that, For the first time in a long time, she was exactly where she was meant to be. The months that followed marked a new chapter in Emily's life, one defined by growth, healing, and the steady rhythm of progress. The company, once tainted by Lucas Brown's corruption, was now flourishing under the joint leadership of Emily and Ethan. The changes they had implemented were beginning to take root, transforming the company's culture into one that valued integrity, transparency, and the well-being of its employees. But as much as Emily's life had changed professionally, she had also undergone a profound personal transformation. The journey to uncover her past had not only reconnected her with her father, but had also led her to discover a resilience and strength she hadn't known she possessed. She was no longer the lost girl who had once wondered about her origins. She was Emily Moore, a woman who had fought for her place in the world and had found it. One afternoon, as Emily was finishing up a meeting at the office, she received a call that made her heart skip a beat. It was Frank Miller, the private investigator who had played such a crucial role in bringing Lucas to justice. She hadn't heard from him in a while, and she wondered what could be so important that he would reach out now. "Emily," Frank's voice crackled over the phone. "I've got some news. It's about the investigation into Lucas's network. They found something, or rather, someone." Emily's pulse quickened. "Who?" "There's a man who worked closely with Lucas for years. Someone who knew about the plot to sabotage the car and take you. He's ready to talk, but he's scared. He's asking for protection in exchange for his testimony." Emily leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. This could be the final piece of the puzzle, the last person who could provide answers to the lingering questions that still haunted her. "Where is he?" "He's in protective custody, but I've arranged for you and Ethan to meet with him. He wants to come clean, but he's worried about what might happen if the wrong people find out." Emily knew this was something she couldn't ignore. The truth had been her guiding light throughout this entire ordeal, and now it was within reach. "We'll meet him. Tell us when and where." Frank gave her the details, and after hanging up, Emily immediately called her father. They arranged to meet at the designated location later that evening, a secure facility where the man, one of Lucas's former associates, was being held. As they drove to the facility, the air between them was charged with anticipation. This could be the final chapter in their quest for the truth, the moment that would bring everything to a close. When they arrived, they were greeted by Frank, who escorted them into a small, nondescript room. Inside, sitting at a table with his hands folded nervously, was a man in his late 40s. He looked tired, worn down by years of guilt and fear, but there was a resolve in his eyes that told Emily he was ready to make things right. "Thank you for coming," the man said, his voice shaky. "I've done things I'm not proud of, things that have haunted me for years, but I can't live with it anymore. I need to tell you the truth." Ethan nodded, his expression serious but compassionate. "We're here to listen. Just tell us everything you know." The man took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "I was part of Lucas's inner circle for years. I knew about the plan to take control of the company, to get rid of anyone who stood in his way, including you, Ethan. The accident that took your wife. It was no accident. Lucas ordered it. He wanted to eliminate you and anyone who could challenge him." Emily felt a cold knot of anger in her stomach, but she forced herself to remain calm. "And me? Why did he take me?" The man looked at her, guilt etched on his face. "Lucas was afraid that if you survived, you might come back one day and claim your inheritance. He couldn't risk that, so he had you taken and left at the orphanage. He thought that if you grew up not knowing who you were, you'd never come looking for your past." Emily's heart ached at the thought of all the years she had lost, all because of Lucas's greed and paranoia. "Why are you telling us this now?" The man's voice trembled. "I can't live with it anymore. I've been running, hiding, but I'm tired. I want to make things right, and I'm willing to testify against Lucas and anyone else involved. I just want to clear my conscience before it's too late." Ethan placed a reassuring hand on the man's shoulder. "Thank you for coming forward. What you're doing is the right thing, and it will help ensure that justice is served." As they spoke, Emily felt a sense of closure beginning to settle over her. This man's testimony would help to ensure that those responsible for the pain she and her father had endured would face the consequences. It wouldn't bring back the years she had lost, but it would help her move forward, knowing that the truth had finally been revealed. After the meeting, as they left the facility, Emily and Ethan walked in silence, both of them processing what they had just learned. The night was cool, and the stars twinkled overhead, a reminder of the vastness of the world and the many mysteries it held. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "This is it, Emily. We've uncovered everything. Now it's time to focus on the future, on what we're going to build together." Emily nodded, feeling a profound sense of peace. "You're right. The past is behind us, and now we can look forward to what's next." They returned to their lives with a renewed sense of purpose. Emily continued to work at the company, her role growing as she took on more responsibilities. She was determined to honor her mother's memory by helping to create a company that valued people and integrity above all else. And as the months turned into years, Emily and Ethan grew closer than ever. They were not just father and daughter, but partners in every sense of the word, working together to build a future that was bright and full of promise. The shadows of the past had finally lifted, and in their place was a future filled with hope, love, and the knowledge that they had faced their greatest challenges together. For Emily, the journey had been long and difficult, but it had led her to a place of strength and resilience. She had reclaimed her identity, uncovered the truth, and built a life that honored the memory of her mother while embracing the promise of the future. And as she stood at the window of her office one evening, looking out over the city that was now her home, she knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The future was hers to shape, and she was ready for whatever came next. With her father by her side, Emily was no longer just a survivor. She was a woman who had taken control of her destiny, and she was determined to make the most of it.